Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Theology at the Threshold. My name is Cole Burks, and this is my contextual project for my master's degree. I am going to be taking topics that I am studying in school and putting them into podcast form so that we can learn together. I want to make these things really accessible for you and for those who are interested in knowing what it's like to kind of be in seminary school. And so thank you so much for jumping on and listening today. I hope this encourages you. I hope you find this helpful. And most of all, I hope this deepens your walk with God. Welcome to season 1. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back. We really took about 15 seconds between episodes that time.
Professionals over here.
It's just crazy how quick we're getting at this. But hey, welcome back. So thankful that you're on this podcast. This is Theology at the Threshold. And glad you're here. We are in the process of talking about active spirituality right now. So if you don't know what I'm referring to, you need to go back and watch all the previous episodes before this. And that will give you sort of that'll catch you up.
Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
But if you want to know what active and passive spirituality are, I kind of talk about them in the first episode, and we get more into that as we're going. But now we're giving you actual active things to do in the context of spiritual formation.
Yep.
And so
quick TLDR of the season so far. We had our intro episode in session 1. Kind of did some definitions, kind of flowed that more into session 2 as well. Session 3 was really kind of digging into spiritual, active and passive spirituality. The last session was on prayer, and this session we're going to be jumping in a bit more on our.
I think
ways of
session
life.
3. I think session 2 was digging into the active and passive spirituality. Then session 3 was the rule of life.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Sorry, I had that backwards.
No, you're good.
So now that we've kind of, brought up the rules of life again, I kind of want to dig into ours a little bit because I feel like that's a big part of our active spirituality. And I have this question written down. We say we gather on Sundays.
Yep.
Why is that important?
Oh, yeah. It's a good question.
And I know that sounds so basic, but in a world, post-COVID and post-deconstruction and whatnot, I feel like just asking why it is important to gather on Sunday is an important question to ask.
I think it is too. I think the first thing we need to jump out of the gate and we need to say, I'll read a Bible verse that I have written down under the "we gather on Sunday" type thing. And it's just this: Hebrews 10:24 and 25. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. So let us think of ways to motivate one another in acts of love and good deed, and let us not neglect the meeting together.
Right.
Most people just get up and they quote, "Do not forsake the assembly of the saints."
Right.
It's like, okay, why? Because we need to be, one of my favorite versions of that scripture, it says, don't forget to provoke one another in love and good deed.
Right.
One of the main reasons that we gather on Sunday at this church is number one, for corporate worship.
Yep.
Like we say that our Sundays are about Jesus here, provoking one another in love for God and love for one another, and letting that love manifest in good deeds. Right. But really, when we say that we gather on Sunday, it's about worship. It's about coming together and putting our eyes on Jesus. But I think it's so, so important that when we're talking about active spirituality, this is another thing that you can do.
Right.
This is part of active spirituality. Go to church, wherever you go to church, every week.
Yeah.
Gather on Sunday. And we say that's part of what we do. We gather. We gather on Sunday. And we get together other times during the week, but that's part of our community. That's part of the community of this church.
Right.
But we gather on Sunday, and really it's to provoke one another in love and good deeds, specifically to turn our eyes to Jesus, to provoke one another to love Jesus and to love one another. And I think that's really why we gather on Sunday. And I think when you're thinking about the reason for you to go to church, you think about the reason for you to attend church every single week. Stop skipping church.
Yeah.
Like, make that a habit. Make that this is what, like, Hebrews 10 says. Let us not neglect our meeting together. Listen, as some people do.
Right.
Some people do that. Don't do that.
Right. I love that the writer of Hebrews was sure to specify, it's like, I know that there are some people who neglect this.
Yes.
Don't be one of those people.
Don't do that. And really, like, here's what I can say. I have experienced this. I've never met a person who consistently neglected the gathering together of saints on Sunday that was being formed into the image of Jesus and was moving forward in their life. God was dealing with the things that he needs to deal with. They were being formed. I've never met a person that was being formed into Jesus's image actively and passively that consistently neglected the gathering on Sunday. I've never met one.
Right. Now, I think something too that's important, we talk about, gathering on Sundays, is a big time for corporate worship. And, for the people at home, like, what do we do? Like, on a Sunday morning, like, it even past, like, obviously, we come to church and we worship, but it's like, what are we doing on a Sunday morning?
Yeah,
I guess
so
is a good way to phrase that.
So one of the things that we often do, and this is liturgical, like, we are not a liturgical church.
No.
But every church has a liturgy.
Correct.
It's either a good one or a bad one.
Right.
Or sorry, it's either a faithful one or an unfaithful one.
It's either an honest one or one that you're lying to yourself about.
And so one of the things that I think that we try to do every Sunday here, we want people to see Jesus.
Yeah.
So in our worship, in our preaching, we try to tell the story of Jesus faithfully. We try to tell the story of Jesus faithfully. And we do that through worship and preaching and all sorts of other things. But another reason that we gather on Sunday is because we set a table. We are preparing a table for people to see God face to face every single week. And we're pointing people to God every single week. And we're making space for God to show up every single week. And so I think that's really, like, if I could sum it up, it would literally be like, we tell the story of Jesus faithfully. We set this table for God to show up and for people to show up at.
Right.
Then when we get here and we all sit down at this table, we point people to Jesus at this table.
Yeah.
And then we create this space for him to do whatever he wants to do.
Right.
It's the active and the passive working all together. We're setting a table actively so that he shows up and does his thing. But I think every single week, like, if you're watching this is part of active spirituality. You need to be in church every single week.
Yeah.
You need to serve somewhere. You don't have to serve every week. You don't need to serve every week, but you need to be actively playing a role in setting the table for God to show up in a real way.
Right.
And I think it's so important that we do gather on Sunday, and we gather consistently on Sunday.
Right.
Like, consistently.
Right. Something too that I find interesting, like in how we view church, and especially in the life of a believer and, in spiritual formation, is something that isn't on here is getting fed. Mm-hmm. And now I understand, like, that's an important part of coming to church, like hearing, the sermon, being encouraged and whatnot. But I feel like so many people nowadays, they will church hop because they're, not getting fed at their church. And so much of our mentality when it comes to, are you a believer plugged into your local church? Great. Are you serving people? Mm-hmm. are you helping set the table for others to eat?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, a big part of spiritual formation in that maturity is learning that a Sunday morning isn't necessarily for you.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so important to gather on Sundays.
Yeah.
Is to serve people.
Yeah. It absolutely, it serves you, but it's not for you.
Right.
Like, this is for God.
Right.
Like, and we come and meet at this table so that we can see him.
Yeah.
And we believe that when you see him, like I read it, the first thing that I read to open up this entire season, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty.
Right.
Those who have seen God, they've had a veil removed, and now they live in freedom.
Right.
They've seen Christ, and now they are free.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're trying to get people to see. We're trying to get people to see Jesus, have that veil taken off their eyes, have it removed off their eyes, so that they can live free.
Yeah. Now, to do that for other people and to be a part of that work going on, in our lives, in the lives of others, what does that require of us in our world?
I think just gathering on Sunday, just making it to church,
right,
requires some things. I think it, referring back to our ways of life and rule of life, it requires getting in one of those. It requires making it a part of your life. Like, church for our family, like for the Burks household, is not optional, right? Like we will never start things or schedule things on Sunday morning,
right,
consistently. And if something needs to be done or something needs to be scheduled or something needs to be worked on, it can wait.
Right.
Because that is the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And I hate to be that guy, and I know that there are, extreme circumstances, and like we were talking fringe circumstances.
Work that you actually have to provide for your family.
Right. But most things in your life can be delayed by 2 hours on a Sunday morning.
Oh, everything can be delayed by 2 hours.
Like that, it's like I understand. Like if your work schedule changed and you haven't had a time to adjust, and like if you're not at work on Sunday morning, you're fired.
Yeah,
like
I want to make a note. I want to make a note just right here in this podcast, and Brandon can attest to this. You see the work that God has done in my life, where I say, oh, everything can be delayed by 2 hours.
Oh yes,
that's a miracle.
That is, yeah.
Everything can be delayed by 2 hours. I want to give really like a shout out here to someone that I know that this is true for, like Tom.
Yeah.
Like Tom's work schedule schedules him to work on Sunday mornings sometimes.
Right.
Okay. When Tom is not at work on Sunday mornings, he is here.
Yep. Shout out to Dave Dinesi, because the same way. Like
Dave Dinesi, the same way. When he's not at work, he's here.
Yep.
And you know what they're always doing?
Serving.
Always looking. Yes, they're always serving, but they're always looking for a way to be here.
Yeah.
They're never looking for a way to get out of being here.
Correct. They never use work as an excuse to not be here.
Yeah.
Unless they just have to.
Yeah.
But they're not looking to make work an excuse.
Right.
They're trying to avoid work being the reason that they're gone.
Yeah. And I think it's especially post-COVID, especially now, you need to be gathering on Sunday with the people of God.
Yeah.
Like, this is true, and I don't care if this makes like our generation mad. Like, your kids are watching what you prioritize.
Yeah.
My friend said this recently, you showing up early to basketball games, you showing up early to football games, you showing up early to band practice, you showing up early wherever, showing up early, you going everywhere all the time, and then you sometimes pop in church when it's convenient for you.
Right.
You are communicating something, and let me tell you what you're communicating. This doesn't matter.
Right. And I think something, too, that we have to come to the realization of is this is an important aspect to spiritual formation. And
Period.
if you want to be formed deeply, if you want your children to be formed deeply, you have to make it a priority.
Yeah.
Like saying that I have the Bible and the Holy Spirit and that's enough,
I listen to worship music.
that has never cut it.
Yeah,
that especially won't cut it now.
There is a reason why the writer of Hebrews said, don't make habit of this as some have done.
Right.
Because, I have never, and this is the God's honest truth, I have never seen someone consistently stop attending church and become more like Jesus.
Right.
Never seen it.
Yep. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I've heard a lot of people say different things about themselves, especially like I have a friend that lives in a different part of the country, and they and this is not like they live out west.
Sure.
So I don't even know if anybody here knows them, but I have a friend that lives out west, and I feel confident like if he listens to this, like he'll probably know that I'm talking about him. But like we have a good enough relationship where it's like I can say these things.
Sure.
Friend that lives out west, and he's like, man, I've just become so much more bold since I stopped attending church. I was like, what do you mean by that? Uh-huh. He's like, well, I just say whatever's on my mind now. And I was like, that's not necessarily good. Like, having big opinions doesn't mean you're more Christ-like.
Right.
Like,
who else is more bold now? People who just live on the internet all the time.
It's like what I've seen is I've become less opinionated as I fall more in love with Jesus.
Right.
I've become less defensive over things that I used to be defensive about. I've become less argumentative.
Yeah, and I think for me too, like when you put things like, emphasizing gathering on Sundays, you are forced to look at people differently because I'm more committed to, being at peace with my brother who has a different political leaning than I do on a Sunday morning than my political leanings.
Yes.
And so gathering on Sunday really forces you to look at the lives of everybody around you and acknowledge those lives and take those into consideration in what you do and what you say and how you act around them.
Yeah. And this kind of gets back to the question, what is the answer? What does it require? Sacrifice.
Yeah.
This is all that we're saying. Hey, you're going to have to make some sacrifices to be here on Sunday. Yeah. Every Sunday. You're just going to have to.
Whether that's a time thing, if it's a
money thing,
if it's a pride thing,
whatever. You have to sacrifice some stuff. And then the next pieces of advice that I would give to people is this is really what Sunday is about. Sunday is about stopping. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop the rest of your life for half a day.
Yeah. Barely half a day.
Barely half a day. For at maximum 6 hours.
Yeah. Including a nice nap.
Yeah. So for instance, it's I don't know what time people wake up to come to church here. I would assume around 8 o'clock or so.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But just think about this. If you just wake up at 8 o'clock and you're here by 10:20, and you leave by 12:20, and you go eat lunch, you get done with lunch at say 1:30.
Sure.
Okay, you woke up, it's from 8 to 2.
Yep.
6
That's
hours.
not even a full day of work.
No, it's not. And you are doing things that you love to do. You're going to eat lunch with people that you love.
Right.
You don't have to go eat lunch.
No.
Go home, take a nap.
Yep.
And really and truly, depending on where you live, you can wake up at 9 o'clock and be here on time.
Yeah.
And so
listen, on a Sunday where I'm not serving, I can leave the house I can wake up at 10 o'clock and be ready to walk in the door by the time service starts.
Yeah. And I think I do want people to hear what we're saying. Gathering on Sunday is important.
Yeah.
Because it makes you more like Jesus.
Right.
It's not just important because you can say, by God, I went to church every week.
Jesus went to the tabernacle.
Yeah, he went to the temple.
To the temple.
And I think it's so important. This cannot be stated enough. Stop your life for half a day.
Yep.
Schedule being here every week. Are there going to be times where you are not here? Yes.
Yeah.
But don't let it be 18 times a year.
Right.
Like, unless it's just necessary, unless your job forces you to. Like, if you're at home every Sunday, you can be here.
Yeah.
Just get up, come on. Come on, baby.
And again, just and we talked about rhythms and paces and ways of life. That's why this is one of our ways of life, because it's a rhythm that we want people in. Like, we want people to be in the rhythm of getting to church on Sunday, because it does form you more into the image of Jesus.
Yeah. And I think that's probably like a good way to segue out of this episode.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, answering the question one more time, what does it require? It requires sacrifice. It requires stopping. It requires slowing down. It requires a lot of things.
Yeah.
In our culture, in our world. But what's on the other side of that is so worth it.
Right.
I've got stories for days. I've got stories in our church community for people who have showed up here consistently week in and week out. Got them for days.
Right.
Got them for days. And here's the thing. You could be watching, listening. You could be that next story.
Yeah.
You could be, and no matter where you're watching or listening to from, just ask yourself this question. And if we were a bit harsh on church attendance, I'm sorry.
It's something I'm also passionate about, though, because, like, you know, I've even had relationships where people, you know, have stopped attending church and, like, we don't see each other as often anymore. Yeah. I'm like, well, before we both made the sacrifice to schedule an entire day around being in with the body of believers.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if we were a little bit too harsh, maybe we were, maybe we weren't. We'll know. I'm sorry if we were too harsh, but what I will say is I want what's best for you and your family, no matter if you come to church here or you go to church somewhere else. There's people that we know that live in the same town, in the same city, that I love deeply, that you love deeply, that everyone loves.
Yeah.
That don't go to church here anymore. I don't care that they don't go to church here. I would rather them be here because I love them.
Right.
But at least they're being faithful to being formed into the image of Jesus.
Right.
And that's really where I want to like exit out, is that, listen, we're so passionate about church attendance, and I'm so passionate about this because of what the impact that it's made on me.
Right.
Man, if you'd have known me 10 years ago, well, you did know me.
I did.
But if you would have known where I was with God,
right,
and you know where I am now, it just, I accredit most of it to consistently being in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so a part of our active spirituality, we talked about prayer in the last episode. We talked about going to church every week.
Yeah. That
you possibly can in this episode. And we're going to talk about something in the next episode that's kind of involved in going to church, but really it's deeper than that. And so we'll see you in just a minute. In just a minute.
We've made it to the halfway point.
Yeah, go ahead and get ready to just hit next episode, because it's right there to hit.
Hey, listen, you don't even have to hit next episode. Just go into the next episode.
Just go right into the next one.
If you're on YouTube, it's going to give you like a little 5-second countdown. Yeah. Just let it go and let it flow.
Amen.